I want to thank the organizers for giving me time to speak today. I was asked to share some insights and developments, especially in the field of AI. I actually touch the industry across many points, and hopefully, what I have to share with you today will be useful for those looking to navigate careers in AI. As some of you already know, the work I do intersects many places, particularly around education, policy, and of course, the use of AI as a technology. So I'll be sharing with you some of the things I'm picking up across these points and give you some takeaways at the end. So I'll divide my talk today into five sections. First, just give everyone a sense of how is the Philippines doing in general in terms of AI. Actually, there's a lot of conflicting information out there. So I hope to give you a perspective on how you should be approaching AI and how AI is being adopted in the Philippines. A large part of my current work is in the IT-BPM sector. So call centers, BPOs, back offices. So I'd like to share updates on how AI is being utilized in BPOs. There's also discussions around whether AI will be disruptive to the BPOs. And there's actually some developments in that part as well. Finally, one of the pieces of work I'm quite proud of was in 2024 when I was appointed as the Philippine representative to the International Panel on Advanced AI Safety. The AI Safety Report was actually just released this year in February. And I'll be sharing highlights from that report, and I'll give you a link on how you can download it because it's also good to understand what are the emerging risks of artificial intelligence. So, first, the question: is the Philippines leading or lagging in AI? And the answer might surprise you. I don't know how many people in the audience will say we're leading or lagging. If you think we're lagging in AI, you're not actually wrong. So as early as 2023, the Descartes Institute, which regularly releases this report on the future readiness of countries, no? Rank the Philippines really down in a list of 100 plus countries. We're ranked 82, and our ranking continues to fall. In the same vein, the Government AI Readiness Index published by Oxford Insights also put the Philippines quite low. In fact, we dropped 11 places in their last report. Usually, the factors they cite are things that we're quite familiar with. Our AI readiness is affected by the availability of skills, the lack of reliable infrastructure, at least in their perspective, and also the policy front. You know, these foreign think tanks don't think we have the right policies in place. In fact, if you think about it, we still currently don't have any laws that directly address AI. We have some laws like the Privacy Act and the Anti-Cybercrime Act that are actually related to what you can do with AI. But actually, in both cases, they don't address the AI directly. Now, so that's the negative. No? So if you said we're lagging, you know, you're not wrong. But then in the off chance you say we're actually leading, you're not wrong either because there are other surveys. For example, recently, and this is about a year old already, the media has been reporting that generative AI, especially, is highly sought after in the Philippines. And there's actually, it's not actually a surprise for me to see this, especially working within the IT-BPM industry. One of the best surveys that I like citing is back in 2023, the Electronic Hub released a report on which countries are most interested in AI, you know, using their search results. And surprisingly to a lot of people, the Philippines is number one. we're the most interested country on a per capita basis, followed by Singapore, Canada, and the United Arab Emirates, which, if you think about it, are also countries where there's a lot of Filipinos. If you think about the constant rankings of the Philippines in terms of utilization of the internet, utilization of social media, I think we have the one of the highest number of gamers in the world. We have the highest usage of Spotify. So we're a highly digitized population. So it's not a surprise if you think about it that AI, being a digital tool, should also be highly we should be highly interested in it. But interest is one thing. What about actual usage? Well, as it turns out, this is another study by Writer Buddy. What they did was they tracked the web traffic of countries to sites like ChatGPT, Midjourney, and all these AI services. And we're actually number 4 in the world, right behind the United States, India, and Indonesia, which, if you think about it, are countries with higher populations than us. And somehow we're right there. We're actually tied with Brazil, which is another large country. The World Bank, a couple of months ago, validated this, and they said we're actually fourth in the world in terms of usage of ChatGPT specifically. So this really runs contrary to kind of the observations, or would be a surprise given the observations mentioned by Descartes and Oxford. For me, one of the best stats was actually published months ago by LinkedIn and Microsoft. And they said, based on their data, 86% of Filipino knowledge workers, so I guess Filipinos on LinkedIn, are using AI at work. That's nearly 9 out of 10. And if you also dig deeper, this is actually ahead of the global average. The global average is about 75%. The regional average is 83%, and we're at 86%. So on average, the impact of AI on work is about half an hour. But again, that's based on a LinkedIn survey. So I think I want to end this first part with this observation, which I wrote about in the news, that it depends on the survey that you read, and we shouldn't be necessarily looking at the AI adoption story from a one-sided basis. The Philippines is either ahead or behind, depending on what you look at. Certainly, we need to improve our infrastructure. Certainly, we need to improve our education situation, especially in light of the illiteracy figures, the PISA scores, and of course, we need to write policies. But at the same time, despite all of that, if you look at the behavior of Filipinos, they are actually using AI a lot, which is a good food. Okay, so having seen the macro, I want to dive deeper into a sector that I deal with a lot, especially in the last several years, and that's the IT BPM industry. So in August last year, the IBPAP, or the IT and Business Process Association Philippines, ran an internal study with their members. And this was published around October last year. So about 6 months old already as of this presentation. And the results were actually interesting. It kind of correlates with the macro picture of AI adoption in the Philippines. First is about 11% of BPOs, as far as IBPAP's members, have already fully implemented AI. When you say fully implemented, these are AI systems that are running in production, agentic systems, Gen AI systems. And is 11% high or low? We'll find out in a bit. And according to the study, more than half of the members are already in progress in terms of implementing it. So 11% are implemented, followed by another 56%. The remainder are either planning to implement or don't have any plans. No? So the question is 11 high or low? Depends. Around the same time, the consulting firm Deloitte also ran a survey within their client base, and their global results showed the following. No? So this chart is slightly organized slightly differently, but I want to point your attention to this latter two figures. A combined 4% had already implemented at least 70% into production. So I think this is the most direct comparison to the 11%. So if in the IT-BPM sector, 11% have already said that they're implementing AI, globally it's around 4%. So again, this is interesting. So earlier, LinkedIn said 86% of individuals on LinkedIn in the Philippines were using AI. This report looks at enterprises, 11% of companies, BPOs, compared to 4% of companies in the Deloitte data. So again, by that measure, we're almost three times more likely to have implemented AI as far as the BPOs are concerned. And that's something to be proud of if you think about it. One of the most common questions I get asked in the media is, what about jobs? And in the IBPAP survey, about 8% of the members have already experienced job losses impacted by AI. But at the same time, 13% have reported job gains, and this correlates with a future of work report released by the World Economic Forum about a year ago. And I think there was a recent one this year that AI will not have just a negative effect on jobs. There will be a positive effect also. So while some jobs will probably go, and we're seeing that now, we're also seeing new jobs get created. And that's actually the key. How do we capture those new jobs generated by AI? Now, the 8 and the 13, as far as I'm concerned, these are just market forces. We're literally just reacting to the developments in the US, for example. 70% of the sector is based on US outsourcing. And that's really outside our control. What we can control, I think, are these yellow boxes. 24% of the members said their roles have changed. So that means AI did not eliminate the jobs. AI changed the jobs. And I think that's very, very likely to happen. And then 26% have said they need reskilling. So while jobs are changing, people need to change also. So if you combine these two, that's 50% of the industry that needs reskilling or upskilling. And I think that's a very, very clear call to action for the education sector. Of course, we have other problems to look at, but AI is certainly an opportunity for us to influence in terms of job creation and skill. Okay, so what do BPOs use AI for? And not surprisingly, it's generative AI related. So natural language processing. So this is chatbots, agentic AI, Gen AI, of course, for content creation, followed by more traditional technologies like RPA. This is robotic process automation, reinforcement learning, and computer vision. At the tail end, you have classical analytics and data science, like supervised learning and unsupervised learning. Now, what I love pointing out here is that the market demand is for these, I would say, less traditional technologies, the new ones. While food for thought, as far as I'm concerned, the curricula being taught in schools is really these classical stuff. So this represents also another call to action for those navigating careers and for schools, that we need to urgently update the data and AI curricula across the board. If you're already taking a data or computer science subject, try to look into these newer technologies, because this is where the market is looking. And those who are looking at just the classical skills, although they're still important, they're really less in demand. And for those of us looking to teach, we have to urgently adopt all of these new stuff and start teaching our students, these latest technologies. And that's the challenge, because many of these technologies are quite new. There's far less people who can teach it. And that's an urgent requirement. If I was sitting in education, or in a school or in the, I guess, the dep ed and the ched, we have to look at this because this is where the market demand is coming from. And this is what will create the new jobs. Okay, of course, it's not all milk and honey, right? There's obviously challenges. And these are the top challenges mentioned by BPOs in terms of adopting AI. Cost is obviously number one. Integration with existing systems, and this requires a lot of really deep IT skills like data engineering, AI engineering, because a lot of systems are quite old, they're legacy, and they will not talk to AI tools. The Some of the more common issues are data privacy, of course, lack of talent, and data quality. And I think these are the needs that require addressing, as we navigate, the adoption of AI moving forward. Now, looking at the operational impact of AI, not surprisingly, BPOs were asked, why are you implementing AI? And everyone's looking at the usual things like productivity improvement, of course, operational efficiency, generating revenue, service quality. What I would emphasize is the tail end of this. I would say these are the emerging concerns: risk management, and of course, job satisfaction. So maybe now everyone's looking at all of these things, but in the near future, in a year or so from now, it's really how we manage the risks of AI and how we make our organizations more humane. Because the more you adopt AI, the more you risk turning organizations into machines. And of course, it's still people that work in these organizations. How do we make sure that the quality of work for them is improved? In many cases, when you do automation from experience, it results in a worse experience for the employees, and we need to address that. Now that we know what's happening in BPOs, of course, the question is, will AI disrupt the BPO sector? If you haven't seen it, I recommend you search for the Andreessen Horowitz pitch. It was published around February of 2025. And this is the first time. Andreessen Horowitz is a venture capital firm, and they basically invest in startups in the US. And they made this article looking at the BPO sector, which they think is a huge opportunity for AI startups. And the main thesis of their pitch is this: manual BPO work should be disrupted by AI because they have inconsistent outcomes. Human labor is very hard to manage, while AI agents are very accurate, they're very predictable, and they're easy and they're cheap to deploy. That's the main crux of it. The kinds of work they're looking at are call center operations, data processing, financial reconciliation, IT management, and HR outsourcing. And if you can see all of these logos, these are the big BPOs. All of them are doing work here in the Philippines. The entire industry, as estimated by Andreessen Horowitz, is about 300 billion. And we have about 38 billion of that, about 10% in the Philippines. The remainder are in India. And based on our internal estimates in IBPAP, of the total outsourceable jobs, only about 30% has been outsourced. So there's a huge market opportunity for all these AI startups, according to Andreessen Horowitz. These are some of the companies, presumably in their portfolio, that are looking at disrupting BPOs already. You have the front offices, so these are customer-facing kind of jobs, and then you have back offices, and then you have what they call AI native full stack firms. So these are companies that are looking at both sides. Now, I guess the question is whether are they disrupting? Currently, as you can see, BPOs are actually adopting AI themselves, and there's a huge clamor for more skills. But then the industry continues to grow. So the impact of this on jobs has not been felt yet fully. But now that you have venture capital firms like Andreessen Horowitz looking at this industry, we now have to be very serious. Are we going to defend the jobs, or should we update the jobs? And of course, BPOs need to change also into AI companies themselves. So I guess that's the implication. So now that we've seen broad adoption trends in the country, seen what's happening in the BPO sector, see the threat of AI on BPO jobs, uh, I'd like to cover parts of the risks of AI because I think AI is a disruptive technology. There's a lot of opportunity to use it for good. But just like Pandora's box, now that we've opened it, there are also some dangers that have come out. Now, the AI safety report, I think, is one of the best places to start if you want to understand the safety and the ethics of not just AI in general, but advanced AI. When we say advanced AI, these are the generative AI, general purpose technologies that have been deployed. You can find the report on this link, bit.ly/ AI underscore safety underscore report underscore 2025. It's about under 300 pages, lots of information. It was actually written by scientists and engineers for policymakers. And the key sections of the report include capabilities, assessment, risks, and how to mitigate those risks. So this chart shows over the years how quickly AI models have reached human level performance. These lines represent different AI models now. For example, the MNIST model, this is for recognizing handwritten digits. And some of these others refer to specific models. You know, one was looking at image recognition, one was looking at text. And well, one thing you can see is that as we go forward, the time it took for these models to reach human level performance was faster. You know, MNIST took years, but now within a single year, a model performance can hit human level faster. No? The dark bar here is the human benchmark. But these are still individual models. When I say individual models, very narrow kind of models. So in other words, the model that knows how to recognize handwriting is not the same model that can play chess. It's not the same model that can recognize cats. So that's always been the trend in AI over the years. We create these very specific, specialized models that can do one thing. Now, all of that is changing with generative AI. You know, this is a similar chart. Both charts are in the report, by the way. And what this does is track the performance of various large language models in terms of answering questionnaires. Okay, so the bottom bar here, this is for random results. And the top bar here is PhD level questions. And as you can see over the years, actually just 2 years, the latest LLMs are already starting to hit the PhD level. And when we say PhD level, it's not PhD level in one subject. It's PhD level across multiple subjects. So I think that's the big difference nowadays. We have general purpose AI that can do many things. So if you, for example, if you use ChatGPT, not only can it answer questions, it can do calculations, it can generate images. So this is very different from the narrow AI that we've been used to dealing with that can only do one thing. So that being said, how should we act? You know, I think this is where a lot of the, I guess, the fears, Hollywood type fears are coming up. Like, okay, are these AI looking to displace us, or will come and kill us? And that's something worth looking at. What has actually happened in the recent past is the emergence of what we're calling deep learning. Deep learning is basically it's machine learning, which is the use of data sets and algorithms to detect patterns from that data and then create whatever, you know, more data or projections or forecasts. Now, around 2010, deep learning became more prevalent. The reason for this is the emergence of cheaper hardware like the NVIDIA GPUs, graphics processing cards, which allow lots of really parallel calculations that enable deep learning. Deep learning is still machine learning, but where machine learning was concerned over smaller data sets, deep learning can now handle huge data sets and unstructured data sets like text data, image data, video data, protein folding for drug discovery. Because the algorithms are also, that's why it's called deep learning. They're quite deep. In other words, you have multiple layers of neural networks that can process all of this information, and that's been enabled by hardware. And you can see here the trend. No, this is actually an exponential chart. So from the 1950s up to around 2010, this is Moore's law. And after deep learning picked up, you can see the slope has accelerated. So it's still exponential, but even more exponential. That's why you saw how fast those models were reaching human level performance. And this is expected to continue. That's why we have to be ready for the era where AI models can match or even exceed human level performance. Does that mean they take over? I don't think so, because at the end of the day, humans still trigger the AI. But in terms of performing tasks, you have to be ready that AI will get to that level. The other thing about jobs, and this is also published in the AI safety report, is that there's a common misnomer that uh, only low level repetitive work is at risk. Certainly, that's at risk. But this chart shows that the higher your salary, the x axis here is your salary, the more your tasks are actually exposable to an AI, especially large language models. Large language models do a lot of work in content, no? And that's everything from writing reports, reading research, performing calculations, generating images. And as it turns out, those are also the tasks being handled by white collar labor. So people with advanced degrees, people with, again, highly paid people are actually doing work that AI can now do. And that's something worth reflecting on. For me, I think it's inevitable. We have to be ready for the era where we will be using AI, where we will be cooperating with AI, where AI will be working with other AI. It's really the trend. Now, for you, if you're looking to navigate a career, how ready is your career for such a environment? Okay, so the AI safety report lists down three types of risks that we have to also address. And I like the way it's grouped together because these represent different kinds of problems that require different types of solutions. The first is obviously malicious use. So he said AI will not take your job. It's people using AI that will take your job. And that's also true for other issues, like fake content. We just recently concluded an election and we were ringing the alarm bell on misinformation and public opinion. Social media is already run by AI. So the way people absorb information is already being manipulated by AI, whether we would like to admit it or not. Of course, cyber offense, cyber attacks are a natural phenomenon now, and AI is being used by cyber criminals to attack. Of course, something more abstract, but actually is happening today, dual use science. When you say dual use science, the creation of chemical weapons, biological weapons, the same AI used to detect or create antibodies and vaccines obviously can be used to create new viruses, and that's something worth reflecting on. The second type of risk is functionality. So this is where AI does not perform as expected. So everything from product malfunction, bias and underrepresentation, or loss of control. I remember when people started using the Chinese AI DeepSeek, they noticed that it refused to answer anything that talked bad about China. So obviously that's a bias that needs to be addressed, despite DeepSeek being one of the cheapest models to use. And then lastly, the systemic risks. I think these are
kind of the more global and macro risks the media loves talking about. So if malicious use is people intending to use AI for bad things, functionality is where AI does not perform according to expectation. Systemic risks are AI creating bad results that people may not have intended, no? Like labor displacement, the digital divide, market concentration. There's a lot of power concentrated in the US right now because many AI companies are based there. Of course, risks to the environment, privacy risks because of the data used to train the AI, and of course, infringing on copyright, which the creative industries are complaining about because of the use of AI for image generation and copywriting. So these are risks worth pondering upon. If we're looking to adopt AI, we need to also write policies that can address this. I keep saying policies are required when markets no longer function properly. And in these areas, markets are actually quite inefficient. They can't price these issues properly, which is sort of why we need a policy intervention to make sure we keep AI safe for future use. So finally, if you read the AI safety report, after discussing the risks, there's also what do we do. And I have to be the first to admit that this is still a work in progress. But some of the areas being discussed include, of course, adopting risk management as a discipline. Risk management was already in popular even before AI. And the same principles you use to manage other risks like operational risks, market risk, credit risk, ISO 31000, for example, can be applied to AI as well. We also need to train better models. When we say better, not just more accurate models, models that are free of bias, models that don't hallucinate, models that promote fair use of intellectual property. That's really the onus is really on model developers. Unfortunately, in the current era, we are generally not in control of these large language models, these foundation models, which is why I'm being one of the first people to suggest we need to develop sovereign AI. AI developed by the Philippines for Philippine use. It's the only way we can ensure that these models are less risky compared to the ones we're inheriting from China and the US. We need to develop monitoring and intervention strategies. So those looking to study, how do you measure model drift? How do you do model evaluations? This is going to be a very in-demand skill in the near future. Of course, fairness and representation in the data and enforcing privacy. So, quite a lot of information to discuss. Just to give you some of the highlights, no? First, the Philippines is not behind in AI. There are pockets where we are ahead, like individual use, IT-BPM. But we also should not forget that we have some key things to fix, like policy, infrastructure, and of course, skills. Jobs is not a one-way discussion. They're both getting destroyed and created. So the jobs that are destroyed, we obviously need to look at how we can upscale people, reskill them into jobs that will be created or retained by AI, and the remainder will change because of AI. Classical data science and analytics, which is what we teach in school, is not what the industry is looking for. They're still important, but for very niche applications. What the industry is looking for is the use of AI agents, generative AI, and I think if we are in the education industry, we need to look at this urgently. Venture capitalists are aiming at BPOs, and BPOs is still one of the shining lights of our economy. And we have to be very serious at making sure that industry doesn't get taken over by AI, or better, transform it into an AI industry. Advanced AI, generative and agentic, is approaching human level performance, and we need to integrate that into our work. We cannot be thinking of work as work before AI and then add AI later. AI has to be incorporated into work by design. And let's let go of the notion that only low-level repetitive work is at risk. Advanced AI actually is used in higher wage jobs. So we won't need to just look at the menial jobs. We have to look at higher cognitive labor. It's actually happening now in software development, for example. A lot of developer jobs are being taken over by AI. And let's keep the three risks of advanced AI in mind. The malicious use, the misuse, the functionality, where AI doesn't perform as expected, and systemic risks like labor, environment, digital divide. These are the broad macro issues that currently have no direct solution. And that requires all of us to cooperate and start doing research and start proposing strategies so that we overcome this AI era together. Finally, any role that looks at responsible AI will be in demand. So I think that's my parting shot for everyone today. If you're going to focus on AI, focus on responsible AI, and you will have a very, very fruitful career in the future. So I hope you found this interesting. There's a lot of discussion to be had. If you want to reach out, you can reach me at docligot.com. My company, Cyralytics, I actually have turned it over to a new CEO, but I continue to be an advisor. Our mission is really to produce 1 million AI practitioners in the Philippines. And I don't know how long it will take, but I think we need to mass produce AI workers and AI users and AI planners and AI builders as quickly as possible, especially in education. So, with that, I hope you have a fruitful day ahead and I wish you the best for the remainder of the conference. And yeah, thank you again to the organizers for giving me time to speak today.